In this tutorial, you'll use Fusion 360 to import and calibrate a reference image. And after completing the tutorial, you'll be able to import and calibrate reference images in the Fusion 360 model workspace. You will begin by importing a side profile photograph of a reciprocating saw, which you will calibrate 1:1 product size in Fusion. In the tutorials that follow this one, using the imported photograph, you will add splines and rectangles to gradually sketch the trigger in 2 dimensions. You will also learn how to edit splines, add dimensions, and apply constraints to the sketch. In the final tutorial of the series, you will use the sketch to model the trigger in 3 dimensions. To begin, we're going to create a new file. To do this, go to the File menu, click File, New Design. With our new file created, go to the toolbar, click Insert, Attached Canvas. We're now going to attach our reference image of the reciprocating saw. In the Attach Canvas dialog window, we'll need to click to select the image. Locate and select the file Saw Image, then click Open. We need to select a plane to work on. Click to select the front plane. Now our image is very small, so let's use the navigation tools and zoom to fit. In the dialog window, we can change the canvas opacity. It's currently set to 50, but we can set it at any value between 0 and 100. For this exercise, we'll set it to 50. Also, we need to click to check Display Through. If we have Display Through checked, this will allow us to see our image through any modelling objects such as bodies whilst we're modelling. If we needed to, we could set the distance, angle, or scale for some of the axes. This isn't necessary for this exercise, however. It's also possible to flip a canvas if we need to, horizontally or vertically. We don't need to do this, so we can just click OK. Now we need to select Front in the View cube. For this canvas, I've already indicated and marked up a line of measure, 415 millimeters. This is the length from the front to the rear of the saw. Now that we've attached our canvas, in the browser we can see that we have a canvas. If we expand our canvas, we can see our saw image. It is possible to attach multiple canvases in Fusion 360, and if we do this, we'll see them here in the browser. Now we need to calibrate the photograph of the reciprocating saw so that it's 1:1 real product scale. To do this, right-click on Saw Image in the browser, then select Calibrate. Now we need to click to pick the first point on the canvas plane, and then click again to pick the second point. Then we need to enter our product 1:1 scale, which is 415 millimeters, then press Return on the keyboard. Immediately that scales up our image to 415 millimeters. So we'll need to go to the navigation toolbar and click Fit to Window in order to fit it into our screen. And that's our reference image attached to the Fusion canvas, and we're now ready to start parametric modelling, which we'll begin in the next tutorial by first sketching the shape of the trigger for the reciprocating saw. In this tutorial, we'll start our parametric modelling by first sketching the saw trigger shape. And after completing this tutorial, you'll be able to sketch the main shape of the saw trigger using splines and lines in Fusion 360, edit splines, add dimensions, and apply constraints to sketches in Fusion 360, and use the attached canvas image for reference. So to begin sketching the trigger for our reciprocating saw, we first need to go to the toolbar and click Sketch, New Sketch, then click the front plane to work on. Then in the navigation bar, if we click to select Zoom Window, then drag a window over the trigger, we can zoom into the area more clearly. Part of the trigger is obscured by the outer casing on this photograph, so we're going to need to interpret where we want our trigger to be positioned. The trigger has a curved area at the front, then a straight line here, a straight line here, and a straight line here. So let's begin by sketching a series of straight lines. In the toolbar, click Sketch, Line, and then beginning on the bottom of the trigger, where the line starts to straighten out following the curve, click and drag a line to about halfway into the casing on the photograph. Then click to end the line, drag upwards, click again, then drag to the left, Leaving some room for the curve at the front of the trigger, click to place the point, then click the green tick to complete those lines. At this stage in the design, we don't need to worry about exact dimensions or angles of our lines. We'll be able to specify this later. We can now sketch the curved line at the front of the trigger using a spline tool. In the toolbar, click Sketch, Spline. Start by placing the first point of the spline on the first point of the first line at the bottom of the trigger. Then place the second point. Place the third point in the center of the largest curve at the front of the trigger. Place the fourth point, then the fifth point joins the first point on the last line to complete the shape. Click the green tick. Now we can note that the inside of our sketch is shaded. This indicates that we now have an enclosed shape. In Fusion, we can do a number of things with an enclosed shape, such as extruding them into new forms to create new bodies. This is what we'll do with our trigger. But before we do that, let's edit our splines, apply some constraints, and finish our sketch. In the toolbar, click Select. We can edit the spline. If we click on the spline points and drag them about, we can move them. So I'm going to make a few edits here on the curves by clicking and dragging the points. I can also change the radius of the curves if I manipulate the spline handles like this. I also want to apply some constraints to our trigger sketch geometry. We already have a right angle here. I want to create one here also. From the sketch palette, I'll select perpendicular and then click the top line and the right hand side line to apply the constraint. Applying the constraint has moved the top line down. From the toolbar, click Select. Now we can simply click and drag the line to where we want it. We can also make any edits to the spline curves if we need to. We need to sketch the rod that connects to the trigger. To do that, in the toolbar click Sketch, Line, and then if we place our first point of the line on the right hand side of our main trigger shape, and then just sketch 3 lines to make a long rectangle. The rectangle needs to be approximately 20 mm in length, somewhere between 3 and 5 mm width, and the sketch needs to join to our main trigger shape. None of this needs to be exact at this stage. We'll be using constraints to line up the geometry afterwards. And just before we do that, we can add dimensions. In the toolbar, click Sketch, Sketch Dimension. Select the top line, then select the bottom line, move the mouse to the left, enter 30, then press Return on the keyboard. With the Dimension tool active, click to select the right-hand vertical line on the main trigger shape, then select the right-hand line on the trigger rod, drag up and enter the value 20, then press Return on the keyboard. Repeat the process to set the width of the rod to 5 mm. Now let's center the rod to the main shape of our trigger. The distance between the top and bottom of our main trigger shape is 30 mm. The width of our rod is 5 mm. So if we select the top line of the main shape, the top line of the rod, and enter 12.5, this will center our rod and position it exactly where we need it. Applying the dimensions and constraints has meant that some of the curvature on the front of the trigger has become deformed. Using the Select tool, I'm now going to make some edits and manipulate the curvature on the front of the trigger to more accurately reflect the attached canvas photograph. And when I've done this, I'll click Stop Sketch. And that's our saw trigger sketch complete. In the next tutorial, we'll use this sketch to create our 3D model of the saw trigger.